We're starting part 3 of our final exam review on cellular respiration and photosynthesis. You are going to need color pencils for this. Um, pretty close to matching my nails. So you're going to need a green, blue, red, purple, and orange. So pause right now and make sure you have those color pencils plus a regular pencil to take notes with. All right, we're going to start up top with a little review of photosynthesis. So let's start there. I'm going to grab my green because we always want to use green for photosynthesis. And let's start with the organelle that is the key part of photosynthesis, and that's the chloroplast. So we're going to shade in our chloroplast in green. So remember, chloroplast is an organelle. It's only found in plant cells. All right, so let's go ahead and label this chloroplast, right? And let's actually go ahead and color in our whole little circle here in green to remind us that photosynthesis involves chlorophyll and takes place in plants and other photosynthetic organisms. And then we'll shade in our leaf in green too. So, photosynthesis. We have our inputs and our outputs. So, photosynthesis has inputs of carbon dioxide and water plus energy. And that energy is coming from the sun. So, going to shade my sun in orange. You could use yellow if you really wanted. But remember, this is coming from the sun. And then it produces sugar and oxygen, right? So these are my inputs, and these are my outputs for photosynthesis. Okay? And we're going to go into a little more detail on that in a moment. And then we're also really going to focus on cellular respiration. So I want you to grab your red and let's just do a little shading in here. So cellular respiration. So we know that our respiratory system is the system that brings in gases that we need, like oxygen, and helps get rid of the gases we don't want too much of, and that's carbon dioxide and water vapor. Cellular respiration is using those gases within each cell. And this happens in every single living cell, plant, animal, fungus, bacteria, doesn't matter. Every cell does cellular respiration. All right, so let's take some notes on that. If you need to pause the video to do your coloring, just pause. It's all good. All right, so like I said, cellular respiration occurs, two C's, occurs in every cell, all of them. Every cell does cellular respiration. All right, it takes place in the mitochondria, which every cell has, right? It is a chemical reaction. So remember, a chemical reaction is when molecules are broken apart and rearranged. Molecules are broken apart and rearranged. That's a chemical reaction. All right, so let's focus on those molecules that are involved. So let's start with what goes in for photosynthesis. I think that's a good idea. So, in photosynthesis, our inputs are carbon dioxide and water vapor. All right. So, carbon dioxide, water vapor. That's what's going in for photosynthesis. So let's go ahead and put that in our box. I'm going to use orange for CO2. So CO2, that's my carbon dioxide. And then grab your blue. Let's zoom in a little bit here. CO2 and H2O. So those are what are going in for photosynthesis. Okay. And then what does photosynthesis produce? It produces oxygen. So we're going to grab our purple for oxygen. So it produces O2. So some of that O2 is given off and actually used into the environment. It also produces sugar. So we're going to grab our red. We're going to use that for sugar. So it also produces sugar, which is my C6H12O6. Okay, so photosynthesis is taking in CO2 and H2O. There's my two inputs. It's using energy from the sun, and it's giving out oxygen and sugar. All right. Now, let's think about how this is used to actually release energy inside the cell. So this is where we're going to have to focus on the mitochondria. So grab your red, and we're just going to shade in our mitochondria in red because that's where we're going to break up our sugar, give ourselves some energy. All right, and the mitochondria, one of its nicknames is the powerhouse because it's where we get our power or our energy. Okay, so let's focus on what is happening inside this mitochondria. Okay, so we know what's happening inside the chloroplast. It's taking in CO2 and H2O and energy from the sun, doing a chemical reaction where it's rearranging these molecules and it's producing sugar and oxygen. So that's happening inside the chloroplast. So we're going to now focus on what's happening inside the mitochondria. So the mitochondria needs to use the stuff that is coming from the plant. So we're going to follow these two arrows. So I said we had oxygen released to the atmosphere, and some of that oxygen also is kept inside the plant and used. So I'm going to put oxygen over here as well. Okay, so I have this oxygen coming in to the mitochondria. I have this sugar coming in to the mitochondria. And I have a chemical reaction occurring. So these are my inputs for cellular respiration, oxygen and sugar. All right. Because it is a chemical reaction, we can also call these reactants. So this is a reactant. Reactant. They're coming in. Okay. And then inside the mitochondria, we're going to have a chemical reaction where we're going to rearrange the oxygen and the sugar into carbon dioxide, water vapor, and energy. Okay, so we're going to fill that in. Grab your orange. The first thing we're going to get rid of or produce in the mitochondria are our waste products. So that's CO2 and grab your blue, H2O. So these are going to be products of cellular respiration. These are also the outputs. All right. So we're going to follow these. I'm going to do it half orange, half blue. And then we also have another product, and that is energy. Energy. Ooh, I should have picked a color for energy. Well, that's okay. So we'll use our red. That's all right. And then we have energy in the form of ATP, adenotriphosphate, but we can just call it ATP. So this is a form of energy that our cells can use. So this would be an output or a product. So what's going in is oxygen and sugar. What's coming out is CO2 and H2O. What has to go in as my reactants, because it's a cycle. So in goes oxygen and sugar, out comes CO2 and oxygen. In goes O2, O2, and sugar. Out comes CO2 and H2O. So our inputs and our outputs just keep cycling through our mitochondria. Okay, so let's back this up a little bit and really focus on this. So if we focus on just the mitochondria, just cellular respiration, our inputs are always oxygen and sugar. Our outputs are always CO2, H2O, and energy. So in go oxygen and sugar, out comes CO2 and H2O. In go sugar, out comes CO2 and H2O. Okay? How photosynthesis ties into that is photosynthesis is taking in the CO2 and H2O and giving out our O2 and sugar. So this is the source of our oxygen and sugar, and it also takes in that excess CO2 and oxygen. So that's how that fits into this part of the cycle. All right. Now let's focus in on what's happening actually inside of our bodies. So let's focus in on what's happening inside the human body. Look, there we are. Okay, so what is going in? We know going in is oxygen. We also know we eat food, so that's where we have our sugar, right? And we have some systems highlighted here. Our oxygen is going into our respiratory system, right? Our sugars are going down into our digestive system. And then once our cellular respiration is happening in all of our cells, we get rid of H2O and CO2, right? So inputs, oxygen and sugar, outputs, H2O, CO2, and energy. Okay? Home stretch, friends, home stretch. So, important things to remember. We want to remember that photosynthesis uses products of cellular respiration. Cellular respiration uses products of photosynthesis. All right, and then a little refresher of our equation. We put in, grab your red, we put in sugar and oxygen, and we get out H2O, we get out CO2 and energy. This is the chemical equation for cellular respiration. Just make sure that you have all of our notes. Awesome.